Want to get to grips with the stories that really matter?
To cut through the spin and the BS?
Want unvarnished and fiery debate?
Then join us for Crosstalk.
1 o'clock every weekday.
We're talking about fan behaviour for our Back of the Stand podcast that'll go out on Wednesday on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you get it as well. It's becoming one that's of interest all around the continents of the world. We've got plenty in Africa who are now following us on this, which is terrific as well. In the States, there's a lot of people in the Middle East too, and of course in the Southern Hemisphere. So it's great to have all of you with us, particularly when you follow Back of the Stand on the podcast. Theo Delaney, the Spurs show Life Goals, brilliant show Life Goals as well. It's a privilege of me to have been very much part of that. And Craig Beasley up the cherries in all departments and the TV work that Craig does as well. This is from Catherine in Cardiff. She said, I'm a bit of an athlete during my girlhood. Not that interested in sport today. However, I love the old Sunday night club and consider myself one of your most loyal members. Well, thank you very much indeed, Catherine. Please keep up the good work with discussions, debates on all the difficult subjects. I think that's what we've tried to be differently here, is we don't really use other reporters and that sort of thing so much. We like to use fans and people that see it from the ground up and have got real passion for their clubs. And that's why Theo and Craig are still with me here. I was really disappointed and quite apprehensive all the way through the Euros when they were in this country, Theo, because I could see from the start of it patently again and it wouldn't be down to finance as far as I'm concerned, with a major European final coming up. You could see in the other games that were at Wembley before that, a lot of the stewards were just young men and women who were there just to earn a few bob that they hadn't been able to earn during COVID. And yet they were put in impossible situations by both UEFA and the Football Association. And what happened, for me, was always going to happen.
Yeah, and it really was totally shocking. I mean, and you're right. I mean, the stewards are generally just employed very much part-time. They're not really trained, particularly. I think they get. I remember filming at Tottenham once, doing a match day in the life of Tottenham Hotspur, and you get there in the morning, you see them all being briefed.
Yeah,
you know, but they're being briefed that day for like 10 minutes. And then they're sent off to do it. Most of the time, that's fine because most games it doesn't kick off and there are no problems. But of course, yeah, in the Euros, that Euro final was so embarrassing, wasn't it? I mean, I had Noel Gallagher on Live Goals, and he's a rock and roller. He's no stranger to, bad behaviour, drugs, even, the odd punch up. But he was so appalled. He said he hoped that we never, ever saw a tournament in this country again. That's how sickened he was by it, because he saw it. He was right there. And I've had other people on who saw it close at hand. I do think drugs played a big part in that. And, it's something you got to keep an eye on because, as I say, most games, everything's fine. You can have these stewards who are not particularly well trained, but they do a great job. I mean, I go to Tottenham and they're great, most of them. And they do a really, really good job.
Yeah.
But when it gets like that, that's quite scary. And that's got to be monitored.
Yeah, and there is that recreational violence that has been with football. But there are other sports, actually, that I think we can learn from certain things. And I probably do it in football as well. I certainly know in cricket and test matches now, there are certainly stands, places like Trent Bridge, where there is no alcohol served, and they're more for family stands and the social side, so you don't have to worry. Yeah, of course, if people want to have a drink and have a sing song and what have you and behave themselves, but if they're staggering in and out of the ground after tea on the first day and there are kids there who just want to watch the cricket, I think it's good to be able to have both of those things. And we're not being killjoys here, but there has always been a slight sinister undercurrent, and the next generation are beginning, because there seems to be dissatisfaction at the moment in all sorts of things, that they have taken again to a bit more of this violence. I see you nodding there, Theo.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, I think it's hard times, isn't it? We're in hard
Yeah.
times, and in hard times, these things seem to come to the surface because there's a lot of frustration and dissatisfaction. People, young people in particular, look around and think, where are the opportunities here? People are skint, and people are not seeing opportunities for prosperity. So I think it's a thing where this generation is the first generation who are probably growing up to be less prosperous than their parents' generation. That normally you expect progress, and I think all of those things fuel discontent, frustration, dissatisfaction. You put drink and drugs into that equation, and it's a tinderbox.
Yeah,
I'm
it is.
afraid.
Yeah, it is. And Craig, what I'm also finding is that clubs, lower down the leagues do have very small minority of troublemakers that have sort of been generational at times and what have you. But at the same time, there are clubs now, and we mustn't forget this, who are fantastic community assets once more. And Bournemouth is one of those clubs.
Yeah, they are, and they've done a lot of work with improving the image, which was already good, even further. And a lot of teams up and down the country have done the same. Back in 1990, there was, and probably everybody knows this story, the day that Leeds United got promoted to the Premier League, or the Division 1 it was. They come down, smashed up the town. And I feel that everything has moved on from that point, but we're at danger now of it sliding backwards a little bit. So, certainly at the start, the 2000s, the early 2000s, we got to a point where things had got a lot better. To be able to go to football was fairly safe. It seems like, and what happened and I completely agree, Theo, with the Gallagher brothers, that what happened that day at Wembley was an absolute disgrace, and I think it probably has ruled us out of ever hosting a big tournament again. But the thing is with social media and people winding each other up and creating these little gangs, we could slowly slide back into what we was before, and that's not what we want. Of course, the addictions and it's not just alcohol, it's not just cigarettes, it is more now, which is also causing these issues. Like I say, at Bournemouth we don't have that issue at this moment in time. Touch wood, we won't. But
for me, there's another thing that you say, and Theo, I'll come back. This is obviously lower down the league. So, and I've already mentioned this with just some young fools, I'll call them, really, who don't know any better, who have thought it's quite clever suddenly again to have flares, fireworks, and there's just a few of them, but they don't. They don't realise the damage that by setting these off or throwing them inside the goal mouth actually not just disrupts everybody's enjoyment of it. They are dangerous. I mean, we must never forget that international match when they were launched across the pitch when Wales were playing, and there was serious injury. And more than that. I mean, we mustn't forget this. And this is where I think the police still have to be involved in some way as a deterrent by making sure that although the clubs themselves ban some of these fans, that they also have to be called to account legally in this country again.
Oh, totally. I mean, there should be. I mean, I'm sure there are laws against taking. Yeah, but of course, some grounds you can just walk into. At Tottenham, we have airport-style security everywhere, right around the ground. I mean, you get X-ray, or you're not X-ray, but you get metal detected. You have to walk through. Nobody gets in the ground without being searched in that sense, and sometimes physically very often. In fact, that was even at the old White Hart Lane, we were physically searched on the way in. But certainly, people shouldn't be able to take things like that in. I mean, that's mad. Actually, also, I mean, the cocaine thing. I mean, if you just once in a while took a few sniffer dogs to football matches, you might end up, if you did it randomly, you might end up creating a very effective deterrent, and especially if you then arrested people So I think things can be done, and maybe they need to clamp down a little bit more. But some of these things, it's like you say, these people who take stuff in and throw stuff, they don't seem to know or realize the danger. The trouble is when you're young like that, and you're in a group, everyone eggs each other on. Next thing you know, you're all drunk anyway, so all your judgment goes, and you're not going to be the one who holds back, going, "No, guys, I don't think we should do this." No. Everybody, it's the mob mentality, isn't it? And that's the sad thing. And even in the past, as we've said, it was worse. I mean, that story, 1990, Leeds United get promoted, and what do they do to celebrate? They smash up a whole seaside town, which has done nothing to deserve it. So it's not new, but it's not good either. Just because it's not new doesn't mean you have to tolerate it, or that you should tolerate it. I mean, things, we need to legislate for it. That's for sure.
I think it is, and I think that we need to keep an eye on it as well. And it's an important topic that we've talked about. A final thought from you, Craig, as well on all of this. Again, of a club like Bournemouth and everything that you have done. I think, it is up to football and those that run the game. I still don't ever hear a voice on anything that we try to discuss on this show. Finally, Rick Parry came on when we were talking about a regulator for the game, but it took my boys, who are brilliant, by the way, but on the other side of the glass, to ring him every day for weeks before they would come forward for something that they should just be there to do. And in the same way, there should be more transparency about what they are doing to help the clubs, a lot of them that don't have the finance to have the police there all the time, but have better stewarding and to try and help. And it again, I'm afraid to say, it is something that there perhaps should be again a levy on, or a certain amount of money made available to some of the other clubs that can't afford all the time, to help them certainly train stewards in a better way, Craig.
Yep, the EFL was actually doing its awards tonight, and I think one thing that they maybe need to look at more is working with the police, working with the stewarding teams to actually get that, knuckled down, make sure that these sort of things don't happen. But the Premier League, having the resources that it does, should also be able to initiate that. Again, we've heard of, the independent regulator situation. Richard Masters turned around and said, don't really need one, which is, I think, is ridiculous. But, we should really be knuckling down, from the top end of football all the way down, working with the police, and also rewarding those clubs whose fans are behaving themselves with these awards, and maybe extra financial incentives. I'm not sure.
Well, I know that the business is all changed with players and agents, but just to throw that out there, £409 million spent on agents in the Premier League. 409 million. I mean, it's crazy, Theo.
That's money going out of the game.
Absolutely.
And we've got all of these things, people are paying, they're putting the ticket prices up everywhere. People are already struggling to pay. You're paying £80. It's not remarkable to pay £80 to go to a football match in the Premier League. And they're shipping out hundreds of millions of pounds to individuals who are already very, very rich, and they're taking the money out of the game. That has got to be a model that is not healthy.
Yeah.
And if you regulated football, and you'd need to regulate it internationally, of course. And we already know that we've had problems with UEFA and FIFA with, they haven't been the best governing bodies over the years for any number of reasons. But if you had it regulated internationally, where you capped the amount of money that the agents could take out of football, think of the money that then you would liberate for good purposes, for the sorts of things that we're talking about. There's no end of good things. I mean, football clubs are community institutions. They work. They should be part of communities. They should bring positive things, and in many ways they do. But that money going out it's almost obscene.
It is, absolutely. And I've always genuinely thought that if you're paying a player £400,000 a week, that he should be able to pay his agent, as is the same in our business. If you have an agent, the player should pay that from his wages, and not the fans who go through the turnstiles. Theo Delaney and Craig Beasley, thank you both very much indeed for being part of our discussion tonight on this. The Prof, Bill Ribbons, orthopaedic surgeon, also doc at both Northamptonshire Cricket and Northampton Town Football Club in his time, and of course has dealt with a lot of footballing injuries. And that's another side of the game when it comes to all of this I want to talk about to Bill next.